All right, now I'd love to introduce our next conversation, mental health, building resilience and support systems, featuring leaders at American Express. Brian Penny joined the Network and Acquire Solutions team as Vice President, Policy and Data Standards in March 2020. In this role, Brian oversees a team that analyzes, consults, and develops policies and data standards for American Express issuers, acquirers, service providers, and their customers. Joining Brian in conversation, we have Alan Fitz, who is the Vice President and Chief of Staff for the Corporate Affairs and Communications Department and member of the Senior Leadership Team. Alan plays an integral role in driving the success of a wide range of initiatives, globally overseeing corporate affairs and communication strategies and key deliverables. Now, it is my pleasure to moderate this conversation, so let's get started. Welcome, Brian and Alan. We're so glad to have you here today to talk about LGBTQIA+ mental health in the workplace and beyond. But before we jump into the questions, is there anything else you both would like to share about yourselves to help set the stage? And I won't put anyone on the spot, so feel free to jump in whenever you want.
Sure. I'm happy to start with a quick intro. Thanks, first of all, for having me. I'm thrilled to be here and happy Pride. So I'm new to American Express, so very happy to be here representing. I think this is my first time actually sort of publicly representing Amex, and so it's a special honor to be here. I joined about 5 months ago. I'm, as you said, currently the Chief of Staff to the Corporate Affairs and Communications Division. I joined from having been at JP Morgan for 4 years. I was there in the International Government Relations team. And prior to that, I spent 8 years in government. I spent 4 years as the sort of day-to-day and traveling Chief of Staff to Michelle Obama at the White House, and then spent 4 years as the Chief of Staff to the US Ambassador to France, based out of Paris. I live on the Upper West Side of New York with my husband, Brendan, and our golden retriever, Georgie.
Thank you, Alan. Happy Pride to you as well. Brian, how about you? Can you introduce yourself? I know that I gave a little introduction, but share a little bit more if you can.
Yeah, I always think of myself as being the newbie, but I guess I've been superseded by Alan. As you said, I actually joined Amex on March 23rd, 2020, and that was the day that Amex closed their offices. So my career at Amex has been during the span of COVID. So it's been very interesting. My experience at Amex has been a lot of little boxes on a screen sitting in my home office in Denver, where I reside. Now that we're back in the office, I am splitting my time between Denver and Phoenix. My husband, Matt, lives primarily in Denver, and we're going to snowbird. So I'll be in Phoenix most weeks, and he'll join me when it's convenient with the weather. But prior to Amex, I worked at Nordstrom for 13 years. Managing their merchant payments. And yes, if you are looking for a career in retail, they do have really good discounts. So that's a plug for Nordstrom. And I've spent most of my career in financial services and retail. So I'm really excited to be here. Happy Pride. And I think, this is going to be a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Brian. Happy Pride to you. And of course, Pride is every day, not just for 1 month. So I appreciate you both bringing your authentic selves to this conversation. And especially, as it relates to this very important topic. So I'm going to raise this question and feel free, to, both of you tackle it, or, we can go in as deep as we'd like. I know I've got a couple questions lined up, but I also want you all to take your time, share your message today, as I know we've got a lot of folks listening who would appreciate your support and encouragement. Okay, so first question. What are the unique mental needs of LGBTQ+ professionals? And if you want to relate anything that you're seeing in, at American Express that you all would like to highlight, I've had the pleasure of moderating several conversations with American Express, also virtual career fairs. And I just love hearing, your initiatives that you all have, especially for queer folks, and I would love to just give visibility to that specifically for mental health needs. So Alan, let's start with you first.
Sure. So I think it's fair, and it's almost important to say that I think every one of us, whether you're gay, straight, or anywhere on the LGBTQ spectrum in between, we're living through a stressful time right now. I think there is a broad understanding that we're living through a high level of stress, high level of anxiety, and we're facing in particular chronic stress. So this is one of these things that you may have all read about, But there are two types of stress. There's the kind of day-to-day stress that we all experience of getting caught in a traffic jam or getting into a spat with our partner. But there are the sort of chronic stress, which is like the sort of unyielding pressure that some of us are feeling from the macro environment. And I think, we are coming out of at least 2 years of a lot of uncertainty and a lot of factors that frankly can contribute to chronic stress, regardless of who you are. But, listen, we've just come out of a pandemic. Our work lives have changed. The way we live has changed. The way that we socialize has changed. We had a racial reckoning, a highly divisive political campaign, geopolitical unrest. Now we've got fears of inflation and economic volatility. That affects everyone, right, as a sort of society. And these types of issues take a real psychological and emotional toll. And not just that, they also take a physical toll. I mean, I think you see it, in people that they feel this stress at their core. We're seeing record levels of burnout, this sort of great resignation. It is sort of impacting us as a society. I think that members of the LGBTQIA plus community have an added layer. This is something that we live with every day. And while we may have sort of gotten used to it and learned to accommodate it, it's still something that is persistent. It takes courage to bring your whole self to work every day. It does. It takes a sense of strength and a sense of fortitude to overcome, any sort of fear of being judged, or the sort of constant degree of coming out that you might have, or use of pronouns that you might worry about. Those are things that we have learned to deal with and accommodate. And then there's this broader environment. So, there are currently 240 anti-LGBT bills, more than 240 across 20 states that are either in process or about to be in process. That's this year alone. There is a sense that, the community is, in a heightened state of assault. Many of these laws are expected to face challenges. Some of that may have, not just local implications, but national implications. And, the Roe v. Wade decision could come down any day. That has potential implications on the community as well. So, I think, taking aside the macro environment that we've all been living through these last couple of years, there are many of us who fear for our marriage. They fear for, the sanctity of the way that we've been living our lives and the rights that we've gotten used to, and the rights that we fought for. And that's a whole other level that leads to this chronic stress, which, has an emotional, psychological, and physical toll.
Absolutely. And Alan, you're mentioning, the trickle effect on a national level. And I'm originally from the States, but I currently live in Argentina. And whatever happens in the States affects the world, essentially, especially, being that Silicon Valley is in the States, the financial districts is in the States. So I'm just going to, I want to highlight and open up the conversation as well on a global level, because lots of folks look up to different initiatives, that get kicked off. So in the States specifically. So I just want to, shout out, the global folks who are listening to this conversation, and just to support also, these initiatives that we might see on socials that might just seem super overwhelming, and send our support as well, however we can, so that we can, open up this conversation and also be more aligned, so that this can have a big, a wave effect, let's say. So I'd love to move on to you, Brian, to specifically talk about how we can advocate for mental health at work, specifically when it comes to the queer community.
And I think the hardest part for companies and for the queer community to advocate for themselves is to know who those employees are. And and every company finds resources, but if they don't know who the members of the community are, then they're going to miss the mark. So at Amex, we have a program called Healthy Minds. And because of some of the unique needs of the LGBTQ plus community, our employees can request up to 5 sessions from a provider who specializes in supporting the community. And that those sessions are there for everybody all the time, and it's a great way. But I think how did we get to that program, and how did we call out that maybe our LGBTQ plus colleagues have special needs? And we have two ways that we have done that. Amex has colleague engagement networks. The colleague engagement networks include things for Pride, for the LGBTQ plus community and their allies, the WIN network, which is for women and their supporters. We have a Black engagement network, and we have at least 10 other networks that support the various aspects of our colleague community. And these networks really closely work with our colleague engagement group. And in Amex speak, that's HR. So we call our HR group colleague engagement group. And so that's one way. And then about 2 years ago, Amex established a self-ID program. And the self-ID program purpose is to allow people to identify themselves and then bring their whole self to work. The company, it's totally voluntary, not mandatory, but through that, we've been able to identify areas of concern through the self-identification for groups that are underrepresented that don't necessarily fall in the legal definitions. And that was one of the things that you mentioned, Mariella, was, how do you identify yourself and come together, and these resources through self-ID and through our Healthy Minds program, and then just through our networks have been amazing for me coming in, and I think for most of our employees.
Thank you, Brian, for that. Okay, so this question is for both of you. What are some of the most important steps that organizations can take to support the mental health of their LGBTQ plus employees? So Brian, since you ended, I'd like to just have you pick it up, and Alan will move on to you after Brian.
I think in this one, it's open and honest conversation at all levels of the company, and that starts from the top. But that also means you can talk to your employees and your colleagues. You can talk to your boss, and don't hide any issues that you're having, because it is going to affect your work. So that's my first comment.
I think for me, I think conversations like this are really important. I think, visibility matters, representation matters. I think people want to be able to see themselves in different roles in different parts of the country and in different functions. I've worked in places where I did not see LGBT leadership, and it is discouraging, and it is detrimental to both your sort of mental health and your mental well-being. It makes you sort of question things that you shouldn't be questioning when it comes to work. And so I really do think that visibility matters, representation matters. And I think at American Express, these ideas are embedded in our blue box values, and so much of what we do, our blue box values are sort of our mantra. It's our North Star in terms of how we do business and how we treat each other, and they include things like we respect people, we embrace diversity, we stand for inclusion, we support our communities. Those things are embedded in the culture here. They are embedded in everything that we do. We are sort of held to that standard in the work that we do, and the way that we interact. And I feel that here. And I think sort of having that sort of sense of that ethos that you can point to at the core of an organization is important. And it's one of the things that really attracted me to American Express.
And I have to echo what Alan said, that it does permeate through the whole company. And one of the conversations that I've had time and time again over the past couple of years has been, I remember interviewing with one of our senior leaders as I was coming in, and asked the question, well, how do you feel about location, or what are you and your family going to do? And when I said, my husband and I are going to do, as I said in my intro, we're going to snowbird between Denver and Phoenix, and we're excited about the opportunity. The leader didn't even flinch, and then immediately went into talking to me. One of the other unique things is that in a previous relationship, my ex and I adopted a son. So I have a 26-year-old Black son who, now lives on his own. But that's also a big part of my life. I can remember my husband and I and my ex and his husband taking my son to Disney World for his 8th birthday, and the 4 white gay dads with the little kid, and he had the best time in the world, and he still talks about that. And I think that's the world we live in, that we can bring all of that with us.
I love that you're able to share your lived experience. I think it's, as you all said, it's important to have these conversations. And the more that we can share, our lived experience and show over time, how we can advocate for ourselves, for our families, for our communities, and do this work in the workplace, which historically speaking, we haven't been allowed to do. So it's a great time to be alive. Lots of crazy things going on. I'm sure both of you can attest to that. But also, if I think of my parents, my grandparents, my ancestors would not have had opportunities like these. So it's so important to have these conversations. And again, just thank you for sharing your lived experience there. All right, so time is flying. We've got a little over 10 minutes left. And I'd love to ask, both of you, how you define resilience, because it's so important in this space. And if we take this into the workspace, I'm sure that over your career trajectory and over your journeys, you've seen lots of things change. As I said before, historically speaking, we haven't been allowed to say what our pronouns are if they don't meet the status quo, and have these opportunities to engage in conversations. So resiliency is key. And I'd love to know, let's start with you, Alan. What does resilience mean to you, and how is it built?
So resilience for me is this ability to bounce back from pressure, from stress, from the sort of day-to-day turmoil, both and the chronic stress, right, that we're all facing, that I talked about earlier. It is that sort of ability to be knocked down and get back up. It's something that is innate in some ways and learned in another. I think we all have to learn how to be more resilient. And some of that has been tested, especially these last couple of years. For me, it's important to sort of try and stay grounded and try and keep a big picture. I mean, I try to sort of carve out a period of time doing things that I love, every day, even if it's only 10 minutes of just sort of reading before bed. I try to sort of focus on exercise and healthy eating whenever possible. I try to sort of prioritize my health and sort of take the days off that you're given, take that mental health day whenever possible. And then the other thing which I think is really important is recognizing and learning to identify stress and the impact that it has on you. Identify the things that really sort of knock you down, especially hard. And then you look for the signs, and then you can sort of make sure that you are actually working to address those concerns as they come up. But that's what it means for me. I mean, I think the sort of lessons of how you build it and how you maintain it are all the kind of golden rules that we learn of sort of looking after yourself and leaning into love and embracing your family, embracing the people that love you. But it's also, I think, understanding how stress affects you, looking for the signs, and making sure that you're addressing it on an ongoing basis.
I love that. Brian, would you like to add your personal opinion also, or any lived experience?
Yeah, I think I echo everything that Alan said. I think the one thing that I can't stress enough is that in the LGBTQ plus community, resilience is a way of life. We do face obstacles that other areas don't face. And so you have to be, you have to bounce back. You can't let it get you down. Your relationships, as Alan said, our relationships are going to be challenged in the courts potentially. My husband and I got married in California in 2008 when it was only legal there, and we did it with two other couples to kind of make a political statement. We jokingly say that the six of us all ask each other to get married at the same time, and then it turned into, we should have done a Lifetime, the Gay Bridezillas show, because it turned into one of those that was pretty funny. But we did that, and then it got challenged, it got taken down, but we were still married. We still had our marriage certificate on the wall, and we just keep bouncing back. Health things. If you have health challenges, it will get better, and you will keep working. We've all lived through COVID, and we're now adjusting to the new reality. We got a call from one of our best friends who was over for dinner on Sunday night on Monday that he tested positive on Tuesday, and well, we just have to test and move on. So I think resilience is just keeping things going and just realizing that you're going to make it and you're going to be successful.
I love that. And I also want to throw in a question that's coming to mind as you all are speaking, because I know that especially in the LGBTQ plus community, and if you go deeper into marginalized communities within the queer community, there is this taboo on seeking help, especially when it comes to mental health. So I love that both of you are saying, check in with your body, give set those boundaries to make sure that you are taking care of yourself so that you can protect yourself, right? And also be your authentic self in different spaces that, might be, seeing someone like you for the first time, right? So any quick tips on demystifying this taboo or breaking the taboo of folks, have not been able to check in that way because, of their own cultural taboos or the community's taboos that they've been raised in. So seeking mental health opportunities or just therapy. I tell my family all the time, look, in the Black community, we don't talk to people, but we got to break that. We need to talk to people. So I'd love to hear you all speak to, that taboo.
I think, Mariella, in the queer community, we have created our own logical families. So, if you haven't read the Armistead Maupin memoir, Logical Family, I think that the key is that your family may or may not be there for you, but you do have your support. And so find that support, whether it's at work or at home or, in the local, LGBTQ plus center, however you want to do it. I've been lucky enough to have a supportive family, but not everyone does. So when you have that, reach out and support your community. And, we're fortunate at Amex that through our colleague engagement groups, our Pride Network, we have been doing all of those things and provide the support, mentorship. We have an executive Pride group where we're all vice presidents and above at Amex, and we're out there, we're proud, we're telling people, and I have several mentees that come to me on a regular basis, and I talk to them not only about their career, but their, what's going on in their life, what are they doing? And I think you've got to find that network, and through that network, you'll continue to grow your support. And then lastly, the thing that I feel, passionate about is bringing your full self to work. We do an annual colleague engagement survey of all of our colleagues. And through the self-ID program, we've identified that people that bring their full self to work, meaning they're out at work, have significantly higher job satisfaction and really enjoy their job better. And so don't hide it. be open, be honest, and be who you are.
The only thing I'll add to that, I think on this taboo around therapy is, I think a lot of us, and maybe even particularly in the LGBTQ community, have come to equate vulnerability with weakness in a way, which is, we need to get over, right? We need to talk about that, and that you need to let yourself be vulnerable. You need to identify when you're actually feeling stressed, when you're feeling pressures, when you're feeling down. And that's actually a source of strength, right? By checking in with your body, by addressing your mental health and not ignoring it, by addressing your physical health and not ignoring it, that's how you get stronger. And I think, decoupling this idea that showing vulnerability, which is what I think of when you sort of talk about going into therapy, talking about your issues, addressing them, bringing them up, that's actually a source of strength.
I love it. And I agree 100%. So thank you both for sharing time with us. We've got about 2 minutes left. So I'd love to give the final word to both of you all. I know that you all are working on some great things at American Express. So let's just pass the mic around and give us some final words of encouragement. Like I said, lots of folks are tuning in. Some people will be looking to get hired by American Express, and anything else you just like to leave us with for encouragement. And I'll start with you, Alan.
So again, thank you for being here. I mean, it's really a pleasure. Happy Pride again. I really do encourage you to hone in on what the company, what the brand stands for. We talked about this before, of how important it is to have a community, have a corporation, have a workplace that embraces diversity, embraces inclusion, encourages you to bring your whole self to work. Those things really matter. And they really affect the way that you experience work on a day-to-day basis. It's good for your mental health, to find a place that actually aligns with your values. And so, to pay real close attention to that. I feel very lucky that I found that at American Express. I found a company that supports me, that makes me feel seen, where I see myself in others, and feel like it's a community that embraces me as I am, and my whole self. I wish that for everyone else who's out there looking.
And I would, Mariella, I would echo what Alan said. The other thing that I would say is I emphasize the mentorship. And I noticed that Power to Fly made a post on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I've done several of these events, and I've enjoyed sharing the excitement that we have at American Express, the things that we're doing, and the people that are there. Because American Express, what we have is, we have our colleagues. We have all the people, the over 60,000 people that we work with. That's what we have to market and brand. And I tell you what, there's some pretty amazing people that we work with. So we will look forward to seeing you all in the hallways in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.